this video, we're going to take a look at searching standards manuals within your PowerDMS. In addition to searching the standards manual, we'll also look at how to do side-by-side comparison, which will be very helpful to see what the changes are when there's updates made to standards, as well as to see when those effective dates are. If you ever have any questions or need assistance in navigating your PowerDMS site, please reach out to PowerDMS support through their email or phone number, and your regional program manager is also a really good resource. I'm going to navigate away from my PowerPoint and go to my PowerDMS. Within my PowerDMS site, I'm going to use this blue table of contents on the left. I see document standards assessments. Those are really where I'm focusing. Right now, we're going to take a look at standards manual, and I can expand my standards manuals by clicking on the little arrow. You can also sometimes you may want to expand your blue table of contents just so you can see it a little bit better. In addition to that, sometimes you may notice where my blue table of contents was staying out. I can unpin that or I can leave it. So if you find that you don't like that blue table of contents staying there, you can unpin it. When I navigate away, it collapses. If I want to bring it back, I hover over the find anything, it brings it back. And for the purposes of navigating through the standards manual, you may want to go ahead and pin it. I'm going to use the law enforcement just as my example today, but the functionality will work the same in all of the manuals. But please do make sure that you're taking an in-depth look at the CALIA Guide to Successful Accreditation Management. It's our process guide. It's going to provide guidance on when you need to update your standards manual and become in compliance with the changes within the standards, lots of other things as far as managing your assessment. But I just want to point that out. For the purposes of taking a look at the standards, I'm going to start with CALIA law enforcement standards. I'm going to open that up just by clicking on it. Couple things come to my attention. First thing that comes to my attention is I can see that it defaulted to version 6.18. There's a three-dot menu here on the right. If I click revisions, I can see here, even though it defaulted to opening up version 6.18, there is a more current version. That's because in the manual here, it's going to default to the version of the manual that your current assessment is created on. Since I have an open assessment on version 6.18, it defaults to this. So please make sure that you're paying attention to see, are there more current versions? And if there are, you can toggle between different versions here by using the revisions under the three-dot menu. Also, from the three-dot menu, you can click Manage or you can bookmark. This is where you might want to bookmark certain items so that you don't have to use your table of contents. I can just go to my bookmarks if I want to jump to my law enforcement standards manual here. I'm going to toggle and go ahead and go to version 6.19. Open up that manual. One of the things that sometimes is helpful is using an internal table of contents to search. To find the internal table of contents, I can see there's a set of maybe three or four little dots here right in the center between my blue table of contents and the manual on the right. If I open that, it opens this internal table of contents. This is a really great place sometimes to start to search terms or phrases. Like, for instance, if I want to see everywhere the word analysis is used within the manual, or if I want to see everywhere the word train or training is in the manual, I can hover over the word preview. It gives me a snippet of how that word's used within that standard, or I can jump specifically to a standard and see how that word might be used more specifically within the standard itself. So again, the internal table of contents, really nice for navigating around. I can clear it. I can navigate using my internal table of contents. I can come back up to the top, or I can use the blue table of contents. There's a few chapters here, introductory type chapters. Just take a look at the content here. Sometimes it's has very helpful information. Each of the chapters, whether I use the internal table of contents or the blue table of contents on the left, if I select chapter 1, I can see there's an introduction. All of the chapters have an introduction. And then most of the chapters have what we would call a subsections, 1.1, 1.2. I can open up that subsection and see the specific standards underneath. In law enforcement and campus security, there's two levels of accreditation that we refer to as accreditation and advanced accreditation. For the accreditation or the first level, sometimes we'll refer to that as tier 1. Campus security will be indicated with a CS1. The law enforcement is indicated with a LE1. So you're always going to see all of the standards, but if you participate in that first level, that tier 1 level, you're going to pay attention to the standards that have the LE1 out to the side, and you're going to be responsible for demonstrating compliance with the applicable standards that are indicated with the LE1 or the CS1 if it's campus security. To navigate specifically to the standard, I can click on it or open it up again, however you most is easiest to you to navigate back and forth using the table of contents. I can also use the up and back arrows or the subsections. I can jump back to the maybe the chapter introduction a couple of different ways. Again, don't discount those chapter introductions. They're going to be really helpful in providing guidance, especially when you're trying to determine applicability of certain chapters. Within the standard, whenever you see something that has the dotted underline, that means something about that lives also in Kalia's glossary. So for instance, if I want to know the definition of review or shift briefing or position, I can click on that and it's going to take me to the Appendix A, which is Kalia's glossary and all of the manuals. Appendix A in the glossary, and specifically then the definition of shift briefing. It's often good to know what is Kalia's definition of certain terms. You may also use those terms, maybe use them a little bit differently. So familiarize yourself with that. I mentioned Appendix A in the glossary. Let me just scroll down. I'm going to minimize it. Each manual has an appendix with several of these appendices here. Some of them are going to be the same between all of the manuals. Some of them may vary. Some that are the same as Appendix A, Appendix B, Appendix C, Appendix E for time sensitive. So A is the glossary. B is guiding principles. Please take a look. Specifically, functions performed or delegated. It's going to help you in determining, is this something that's applicable to us? C, if you want to submit a form for standards related issues or maybe request a change to the standard. And then specifically Appendix E, we make reference to Appendix E pretty frequently for new accreditation managers and folks involved in the process that are new to CALIA. This is a list of all the standards that have some type of a time-sensitive requirement to it, weekly, monthly, quarterly, semi-annual, annually. It's going to give a list of the standard, really brief, what type of the action it is, and the frequency of it. You can print that list. You can print a standard. What you cannot do is print the manual in its entirety, but you can print the standard to PDF one by one if you care to. A part of the reason for that is to try to ensure that you're always accessing and referencing the most current version. If we allowed for it to be printed in its entirety, for one, it could be shared perhaps with people who are not non-CALIA clients and who don't have permission to use the manual, but also more risk that you're not accessing a more current version. In regards to versions of the manual, you can either click Manage here using the three dots, or I can click Manage in the upper right-hand corner. When taking a look at some of these tabs here, this is under Security, is how you can give other users or groups of users permission to see this manual. Minimally, view rights allows them to see the version. Audit would allow them to do side-by-side comparison, and edit, usually only the accreditation manager would need edit permissions, and that is going to allow the accreditation manager to create an assessment off the manual. We've not gotten to that yet. That's in a separate video, but you don't actually edit the manual, but it allows you to generate an assessment from the manual. The Assessments tab allows me to see archived assessments and open assessments. So any of the assessments, the history of the assessments from the law enforcement manual, and then revisions. This is going to be a really important location to come to see side-by-side comparisons. And to also see, I mentioned, to see when that version of that manual is published. So for the purposes of demonstrating compliance, the date that this version was published in PowerDMS, for example, version 6.19 was published on 11/22/2023. If you refer to the CALIA Guide to Successful Accreditation Management, the rule for coming into compliance with updated versions is you have a year to come into compliance or demonstrate compliance. We use the date that it's published in PowerDMS to determine that timeline. Sometimes the commission will indicate a standard is that you have to come into compliance a little bit faster. Sometimes it might say effective immediately or effective on a specific date. But if it's not indicated, or if we've not communicated that another way, then you're going to use this date here. When we communicate that there's a newer version available, you can do a side-by-side comparison to see exactly what those changes are. If I, in this example, if my assessment is on version 6.18, I can compare just between these two. Or if I were in a much older version for some reason, typically you're not going to be more than a year old, hopefully. But just for demonstration purposes, let's take something that's much older and see what all of the changes are. I'm going to scroll to the very bottom. So this is going to give me a comparison between 614 and all of the changes between 614 and 619. I click that button, compare. Each time I click that button, it renders a fresh comparison, so it takes several seconds. It opens up this, again, an internal table of contents. There is a legend at the top. I'm looking for items that might be in green. Items that red have been removed. Green means added. Blue means moved. Sometimes when something's added or removed, it causes the standard to move a position, and so it turns blue. Bold means something that already existed, had a change to it. Special attention, we're going to be paying attention to those red asterisks. So that just means something changed beneath it. And so we're going to really pay attention to that. In order to really see those asterisks, I like to sometimes expand this by moving this out a little bit so we can really pay attention and see. Sometimes changes are minimal, sometimes they're a little bit more. If I click on 1.2.9, I can see the current version on the left, or the 6.14 is what I chose compared to the most current versions. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it changed in 619, but somewhere between 615, 616, 617, 618, 619, that change was occurred. Sometimes just changes are less. But as you click through, if it was an existing standard that had a change, it's going to auto expand. The chapter will auto expand and the standard will be in bold. But if I scroll down, sometimes we have to pay attention. This is a perfect example right here in chapter 45. Let me move this over a little bit. I can see there's an asterisk. Part of the chapter is expanded. I can see there's an asterisk. So that means something beneath 45.2. There's a change to it. When I see an asterisk, but it's not auto expanded, usually that's an indicator that there's a new standard. Something new was added. In this case, it's in green, 45.2.3. I can click that and it lets me know that this was a new standard. There's not a side-by-side comparison. It was recently added. So as you scroll through, here's an example where this is in bold. This is a good example where bullet C was deleted, but actually it ended up being its own standalone standard, which is in green in this example here. So scroll through here, see all of the changes. Sometimes definitions are added, and again, when something's added, it can cause things to move position, which just turns it blue. So if it's not bold, it didn't have a change. If it's not green, it's not new. It just moved a position. When I'm all done with all of my comparison, I can click Finish Compare, and you can do that anytime. You do not have to wait for the upgrading of an assessment. You can come here, you can only check two boxes. If I wanted to see just the changes between 618 and 619, I would just check those two boxes. If I wanted to see the changes, all of the changes between 615 and 619, I would select those two boxes, scroll to the very bottom, click compare, and then I can do that side by side comparison, see very specifically exactly what changed. And again, um, by going to the revisions tab, this is the date it's published. I have 12 months to come into compliance unless otherwise indicated. So typically you're not going to be on a version older than 2 or 3. We recommend you update your assessment right away, but you still have that 12 months to come into compliance. And we will go through the steps of how to update an assessment in a separate video.